When you think back to your childhood, what is it you think of most fondly? Is it a specific memory with friends or family? Is it an old game you used to play? Or a show or a movie you love to watch? Whatever it may be, we all have fond memories and hobbies from when we were young. Well, one of my favorite things from my childhood was amusement parks. More specifically, roller coasters. Hello everyone, welcome back and happy holidays. And you might be thinking, Zach, this has nothing to do with hockey. And you're right, I've decided to branch out on this channel into more random topics that I'm interested in, with the only real rule being I want to focus, for the most part, on long-form content. So today I thought it would be fun to cover one of my favorite childhood hobbies that I've recently gotten back into, that being amusement parks and roller coasters. And you might be thinking that's not very different or unique at all, but as you'll come to see, I didn't just like them, I love them. As long as I can remember, I was obsessed with roller coasters. I was fascinated with the way they looked, the engineering that went into making them. One of the first jobs I ever wanted to do was be an engineer that designed roller coasters for amusement parks. I played all of the games, not just Roller Coaster Tycoon, but Planet Coaster, Thrillville Off the Rails for the Wii, shout out that game. I even played a shitty PS2 roller coaster game. Still not convinced? One of my favorite movies growing up when I was a kid was a VHS tape called America's Greatest Roller Coaster Thrills. And unfortunately, I don't still have the tape with me, but here's a clip of it on YouTube to prove that it exists.
Okay, that's my kind of coaster now. Let's go for a ride. That'd be fun.
Lisa, for that coaster, you have to be below this line, and I don't qualify.
Eric, it doesn't matter. I love Wile E. Coyote. It'll be fun.
I know you do, but you know what? I've got a coaster that is just perfect for big, brave grown-ups like us, so,
I'm not very brave.
Give me your hand. Come on. Batman the Ride was designed by Bolliger and Mabillard. Will be hitting 10 stories.
10 stories?
50 miles an hour, G-forces of 4.
4 Gs?
Now, I'm not 100% sure what made me so enamored with amusement parks as a kid. All I know for sure is I was. And that's not the extent of what makes my obsession so weird. See, as much as I loved to walk around the park as a kid and watch the rides in action, I was really afraid to ride most of them as a kid. I'm not sure if my fear of heights was the only reason or if I thought maybe something bad would happen if I went on them. I mean, that's a pretty common fear that a lot of people have, even though amusement parks are usually extremely safe. But regardless of what the root of that fear may have been, I still loved amusement parks. And I've been fortunate enough to continue to visit amusement parks throughout my life, including a trip I took recently to Southern California, where I got to visit 2 parks. So I thought it would be fun to talk a bit about those trips, and while I'm at it, I wanted to revisit some of my favorite roller coaster related memories and experiences. This is probably going to be a long video, so let's not waste any more time and get straight into it. Recently, I had the good fortune of taking a trip down to Disneyland in Anaheim, California. Now, I've been to the park a handful of times, but most were when I was pretty young, so I don't have many clear memories of the park. Or at least, I didn't. First off, I want to say the park looks incredible when it's decorated for the Halloween season. The theming and attention to detail really do blow most other parks out of the water. Also, check out this cool Halloween decoration I got in downtown Disney. One of the first things we did when we got to the park was ride Pirates of the Caribbean. And it's at this point I have to make my first, probably embarrassing confession of the video. When I was a kid, I was very scared of most thrill rides, and I was freaked out a lot by the animatronics at Disney. I remember being scared of the Yeti and the Matterhorn. I remember being scared of Splash Mountain, and I especially remember being scared of Pirates of the Caribbean. I didn't like being in the dark for so long, and the animatronics were really uncanny looking to me. I mean, they still kinda are. And I know a lot of you watching are probably already wondering, why were you so obsessed with roller coasters if you were so scared of them? And to that I have to say, I don't know. I was a dumb kid, alright? But I did eventually get over that fear in middle school, which is probably a story for later in the video. Anyways, we did Pirates, and this time I wasn't scared. Actually, I was blown away by how fun the ride was. Sure, outside of the 2 small drops, it's a very, very tame ride, but the theming and story is so impressive, even more so considering the ride's age. Keep in mind that this ride turns 58 years old this year. After that ride, we went and got some Mickey-shaped beignets and a cranberry mint julep, both of which were amazing. After that, we headed over to Galaxy's Edge to ride maybe my new favorite ride in the world, Star Wars Rise of the Resistance. Now, if theming and storytelling is Disney's bread and butter, then this ride is the La Crusade it was cooked in. I know the ride is a few years old already, but I really don't want to spoil anything for those of you who still haven't ridden it or don't know what happens. All I have to say is, if you get the chance to go to Disneyland, this ride needs to be a must-do for you, alright? I actually went to Galaxy's Edge not long after it first opened, but the only ride that was open at the time was Smuggler's Run, and yeah, let's just say there's a reason it doesn't get very long lines these days. While we were in that land, we also got the Ronto wraps at the cafe, which are pretty much just pita wraps with pork and a really delicious peppercorn sauce. And I also tried both the blue and green milk, which have a very hard to distinguish flavor to them. The best way to describe them, though, is sweet. We also hit up most of the rides in Fantasyland, which, while definitely aimed at little kids, were still fun in their own right. I really like that old style of Disney ride where you're basically just going on a track through a dark room with a bunch of like neon painted cardboard cutouts and scenery. My favorite of that style of ride would probably have to be the Winnie the Pooh ride. I like the ride cars and it has the most fun visuals in my opinion. Later in the day, we headed over to another ride I was too scared to do as a kid, that being the Haunted Mansion. Now this was a ride I actually never did at all as a kid because I was too scared of the concept. So the last 2 times I went to Disneyland are the only times I've ever done this ride, and I have to say it certainly made an impression. So much so that I would actually go as far as to call it one of my favorites in the whole park now. The mansion itself looks incredible, especially with all the Halloween decorations on top of it. And the ride itself being Nightmare Before Christmas themed is super cool. I know that's only for the Halloween season, but still. The sheer scale of this ride is awe-inspiring, and much like Pirates, given its age, the technology they had at the time to pull this off is incredible. Now I really want to go back when it's not Halloween themed, because I've heard that the original story for the ride is actually even better than the Nightmare Before Christmas one. We did a bunch more rides, including the Mad Tea Party and Space Mountain. I'm really impressed with how smooth Space Mountain is, by the way. Being completely in the dark means that you can't really brace yourself for any of the turns, so it being as smooth as it is kind of makes the ride for me. We also got skewers at the Bengal Cafe outside the Indiana Jones ride. Skewers were good, but the garlic cheesy bread stick thing, I forget what it's called, was terrible. It was bland and tasted like a frozen breadstick that they microwaved for like a minute. Speaking of the Indiana Jones ride, right at the end, shocker, it broke. Right at the boulder scene where you're looking at Indy hanging down from the rope. It was only for like 2 minutes, so it wasn't a big deal, but I've heard that happens like literally every time people ride it, so I thought that was pretty funny. We also did Buzz Lightyear's Astro Blasters. That is a very nostalgic ride for me, and I actually have one of the toy versions of the on-ride blasters. Unfortunately, it doesn't work anymore, but I used to love annoying my granny with it when I was little. I don't want to talk about every ride in too much detail. This video is already going to be long enough as it is, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention at least 2 more rides in particular. One of which is tucked all the way back in the park in Toontown, and I'm of course talking about Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. For those of you who haven't ridden it, you might be thinking, what? That just looks like another kids ride in Toontown. Why is that noteworthy at all? But those of you who have ridden it know it's one of the better rides in the whole park. Without saying too much, it's the newest ride at Disneyland and uses the same trackless ride system that Rise of the Resistance uses. The line queue is also one of the best and has a few tricks of its own. For a ride that apparently replaced an old shop that used to sit in its building, they did a great job with the space they had. They really made it feel like that ride was always supposed to be right where it is. Whoa, scene transition. Anyways, the other ride I need to talk about from Disneyland is the Matterhorn. I think the Matterhorn was the one ride that scared me the most at Disneyland. I know I said earlier it was Pirates, I changed my mind, it's a Matterhorn, fuck you. But now after riding it again, I think it just kind of sucks. Alright, sucks isn't the right word. The ride is super rough, and while I really enjoy the theming, I don't necessarily think it's worth the long wait it had. When we went, we rode it at night, and the mountain looked beautiful, lit up, very pretty, but it also had by far the longest line of the day. Now, the crowds at Disney that day were actually pretty light, but we waited probably close to an hour and a half for the Matterhorn, which I know for Disney is not that bad at all. But again, like I said, we went on a weekday and every other ride in the park was not even an hour. Probably the second longest line was like 40 minutes. Anyways, you'll be happy to know I'm not scared of that Yeti animatronic anymore. We ended the night with another ride on Pirates before we grabbed some Mickey beignets and watched the night parade on Main Street. Overall, it was a great day and it was just the start of our trip. The next day we went to Knott's Berry Farm. Now, I have been to the park before, but that was all the way back in like 2014, 2015, so I do have some memories of the park, but still it's been quite a long time. Walking up to the front gate, you get to walk right under the structure of their massive wooden coaster, Ghost Rider, and seeing Silver Bullet's Cobra roll that runs right up against the park's entrance, it's beautiful. When we first got in the park, we went straight to Ghost Town to get on Ghost Rider. Or at least we would have if we weren't stopped and forced to buy a locker before getting in line for the ride. If by some small chance someone at Knott's or Cedar Fair / Six Flags or whoever ends up seeing this, this is such a dumb rule. And no $2 an hour or whatever the price was isn't the issue, it's the principle of the thing. Because not only do other parks in the Cedar Fair / Six Flags chain not do this for their roller coasters, other rides in Knott's Berry Farm don't do this as well. To my knowledge, Ghost Rider, Silver Bullet, and Hang Time are the only 3 rides in the entire park that require you to buy a locker. The rest either let you carry your bags on the ride or they provide cubbies for free. And you know what makes this even worse is that this is a new decision. They didn't start doing this until September of this year. Before then, they were providing cubbies for those rides as well, so that it was also free back then. Anyways, enough of me yapping about the lockers. Let's get to the actual ride. The actual ride experience on Ghost Rider is amazing, and easily one of the most thrilling wooden coasters I've ever done. Which might not be saying that much because, unlike a lot of enthusiasts, I haven't really ridden any coasters outside of California. Well, except one. But the airtime and the turns on this ride are super fun. I really love that awkward, non-banked turn about midway through the ride, right before the mid-course brake run. Enthusiasts will know what I'm talking about. I love the work that GCI did with the retracking, and the Millennium Flyer trains are always really comfortable to sit in. After that, we explored some more of Ghost Town, which is honestly probably what they could have renamed the whole park, because man, this place was empty. I don't know if we just got really lucky or if attendance in general is down at Knott's, but I think the longest line we waited in all day was maybe 30 minutes. Eventually we decided to try some of the food, as that was one of the main reasons we wanted to go to the park in the first place. We ended up getting a regular hot dog meal, and not only was the hot dog itself delicious, but the roasted vegetables and garlic bread it came with were amazing too. We also ended up getting a candied piece of licorice with toffee on it, which was so good it inspired us to make our own when we got back home. Anyways, I want to talk about the boardwalk section of the park, as it's home to 2 of my new favorite roller coasters. Hang Time had by far the longest wait of the day. Like I said, it was maybe 30 minutes, and it would have been much shorter, but for some reason one of the trains they were running only had one working car, so only every other train was actually carrying people on it. The lift hill and the first drop are genuinely some of the most terrifying I've ever experienced, rivaled only by maybe, say, X2 at Six Flags Magic Mountain. It's really fun though. I had never done a beyond vertical drop before. Oh yeah, this ride's first drop is 96 degrees, by the way. And it also holds your car at the top for like 5 seconds before said drop. I've heard some people in the past complain about it having a rattle, but honestly I found it to be pretty smooth. Then it was time to make our way to Accelerator, which was a literal walk-on. And even after all of my years of getting used to roller coasters and conquering my fear, I was still a little nervous for this one, I'm not gonna lie. Especially since it launches you straight out of the station, like there's no little pre-ride thing. However, the second it launched, my nerves turned to joy. It may be short, but the punch it packs is so strong that I really didn't care. It was so fun that I had to ride it a second time before we left that day. I mean, look at this ridiculous photo of me on the ride. Can't you tell I'm having a blast? But we can't just ride Accelerator all day. There's other fun stuff to do, like get a boysenberry flavored icy, or get boysenberry flavored Dippin' Dots, or get boysenberry barbecue chicken wings. Seriously, they have a lot of boysenberry stuff there. I wouldn't be surprised if they had boysenberry flavored condoms. I don't fucking know. Silver Bullet is a really fun inverted coaster designed by B&M, and that ride was such a walk-on, we actually did it twice in a row. And then there's the Calico Mine Train, which is a really impressive train ride built into a mountain set. And it's probably the closest thing I think I've seen to a Disney or Universal level ride in terms of theming outside of, Disney or Universal. We also hit up Pony Express, Jaguar, the Carousel, and a couple other family-oriented rides before leaving. Like I said near the beginning, this trip is what inspired me to make this video in the first place. Getting to go to these two parks back to back after not going to any for quite a while really reignited my passion for both amusement parks and roller coasters. But I've been going to amusement parks for several years, and the one I've undoubtedly been to the most is California's Great America.
What would you say to an entire season of thrills for the price of one day? Too good to be true? Not at Great America. With the most kids attractions, most water rides, and most coasters, it's Northern California's most thrilling theme park.
Located in Santa Clara, California, this park was originally one of two both built and run by the Marriott Corporation. The park first opened in March 20th, 1976, and it was later bought by Paramount in 1992. Then, in 1994, Viacom in turn took control of Paramount. This allowed Great America, as well as the other parks owned by Paramount, to use IPs that the company owned for theming. This meant there were Nickelodeon/Hanna-Barbera themed rides in the kids area. The Drop Tower was known as Drop Zone Stunt Tower, and the ride, now called Tiki Twirl, was originally themed to the show Survivor. And the main attraction at the time was a B&M inverted coaster named after the movie Top Gun. I have so many fond memories of this place. When I was young, my grandparents would take me and my brother at least once a summer. I couldn't ride most of the rides in the park, not that I would have wanted to anyways. I just liked being there. I liked watching the big rides in action, I liked going on all the little rides, and then I liked going to play on the playground. I think the first roller coaster I ever went on was Lucy's Krabby Cabbies, then called Taxi Jam. I was probably like 4 when I was finally brave enough to do it, and of course I loved it. Eventually, like a year or so later, I graduated to a much bigger roller coaster, Woodstock Express. But back then it was called Rugrats Runaway Reptar. And actually, while double checking to make sure that that information was accurate, I stumbled upon the Wikipedia page for this ride, and I went down a rabbit hole of exploring the history of this coaster. So I want to take a moment to talk about it because in my opinion, it's really interesting. Woodstock Express originally opened in 1984 at an entirely different park called Hanna-Barbera Land, located in Spring, Texas. It was originally themed to Scooby-Doo and called Scooby's Ghoster Coaster. 3 years later, it was moved to Great America and renamed Blue Streak. It sat in what was originally the Smurf Woods, the Smurf-themed kids area, and had a little Smurf mushroom village throughout the ride's layout. After Paramount acquired the park, the area was rethemed to Nickelodeon properties, and the ride was changed to Green Slime Mine Car. Then in 2002, it was repainted orange and changed to the Rugrats theme. And finally, in 2010, the ride was repainted again and was changed to Woodstock Express, which is still the name it goes by today, even though they did recently repaint it again. Now, does literally anyone watching this care about that? Probably not, but I thought it was interesting because I was under the assumption that the ride only ever operated at Great America and only had its name changed once. Now, obviously, this ride is also aimed at kids and families. The last time I tried to ride it, I think I barely even fit in the car. But as far as kids coasters go, this one is much more enjoyable than Lucy's Krabby Cabbies. Woodstock Express has a decent sized drop and a couple somewhat fun elements. I think this is a ride that most people would actually enjoy, or at the very least not regret riding once. So those are the two kids coasters in the park, but what about something bigger?
Come a little closer. Don't be afraid. Come, let the excitement swallow you up. The Grizzly, new at Great America. Rip-roaring excitement.
Grizzly is what I like to refer to as my first real roller coaster. I can't remember exactly what age I was when I was finally brave enough to ride it, but it was somewhere around like 8 or 9. One thing you're going to notice with this video is when I finally do try something new like this, I always end up loving it and feel silly for ever having been afraid of it in the first place. For a while this was actually one of my favorites, if not my favorite ride in the world, which is kind of funny looking at it now because the pacing of the ride is so sluggish and boring, and outside of maybe the first drop, there's absolutely no thrill factor to this thing. I actually had a friend in middle school who was also obsessed with roller coasters, and he and I hoped that one day it would be transformed into a hybrid coaster by the company Rocky Mountain Construction. He and I would both try to come up with what we thought a new layout could look like for an RMC revamp, if they ever did do one. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem like it'll ever be a possibility now, but we'll talk a little bit more about that coming up. I know a lot of this video so far has been about the weird relationship that I have with amusement parks, this conflicting feeling of being fascinated by them and wanting to learn more about them and explore them, but also being too scared to ride them. I remember one time when I was about 10 or so, my dad took me and my brother down to Six Flags Magic Mountain. And for those of you who don't know, Magic Mountain has the largest collection of roller coasters in the world. And it was a trip I really wanted to go on, but sadly when we got there, I was too scared to ride a lot of the rides. I definitely did all the kiddie rides, and I did like Colossus and Apocalypse, the 2 wooden coasters at the park, but I wouldn't do much else. And looking back on it, I feel really bad for my dad because, you know, he spent all this money on this trip and I feel like I didn't take full advantage of it. But it's okay. He took us back in like 2019 and I rode literally everything I could there that day. So I think I've already had my redemption arc with that park. Thinking back on it, maybe I just liked being scared a little bit. I mean, I've always been a horror fan, so... But anyways, I want to finally get to the time that I conquered my fear of roller coasters for good. It was back in 8th grade at the end of the year. Our whole class took a field trip to California's Great America, and I was in a group with several of my friends, so we had to decide as a group on what to ride. Naturally, most of them wanted to go on the bigger rides, so we went over to The Demon. Now this ride was pretty much my worst nightmare as a kid. Not only did it have 4 inversions, making it not the easiest for people who are scared to go upside down, but it also had 2 tunnels. And fun fact about me, I was also really scared of the dark as a kid, one of which was at the very start of the ride, and I'm pretty sure they used to play like menacing music or a voice in the tunnel to scare people. Now I was incredibly nervous in line, but I also wasn't about to be the only one in the group to not do it. So after waiting in line, I reluctantly got on and we were off. And besides the ride being a little bit rough, I thought it was really fun. Going upside down wasn't nearly as scary as I thought it was going to be, and honestly I was way more excited than I probably should have been about it afterwards. And after that, it unlocked something in my brain. I mean, I wanted to do everything. That same day we rode the stand-up coaster Vortex, which is now a floorless coaster called Patriot, and I even rode Top Gun, now called Flight Deck. And I loved each of them more than the last. Flight Deck really did blow my mind with how intense it was. For a coaster that opened in 1993, it still runs really well, and despite the shorter layout, it packs a mean punch. That trip honestly felt like a big moment of growth for me, as I hadn't really had any experience with conquering my fears so head on like that before. And while those rides I listed are fun, well, maybe not Demon, they're not my favorite in the park. That honor would have to go to the 2 newest coasters in the park, and I could sit here all day gushing about these ones, but I'll be merciful and try to keep this short, alright? Opening in 2013, Gold Striker is a wooden coaster built by GCI that provides one of the most chaotic experiences you'll ever have on a ride. Everything from the partially enclosed first drop that also has a weird sloping profile to it, to the brief moments of ejector airtime and the insane bank turns, this ride is completely relentless from start to finish, and I love it for that. Now, it has gotten a fair bit rough since it first opened, but I don't mind that at all, to be honest. This is a perfect wooden coaster in my opinion, and I feel so lucky to have it at a park that I visit frequently. I mean, what else in the park could even top that, really? Well, how about the newest ride? Opening in 2018, Railblazer was built by Rocky Mountain Construction, and it does pretty much everything that Gold Striker does well, but with an even crazier pace. The single rail design also ensures that you always ride alone, so no holding on to anyone's hands for help. That 90-degree first drop is absolutely breathtaking, and the airtime hill after that first inversion provides some of the most aggressive ejector airtime in the world. This ride is just pure fun, and I can't help but smile every time I ride it. And despite how intense it is, I also can't help but keep my hands up while riding. I hear coaster enthusiasts talk all the time about the importance of having a strong top 2 or 3 coasters in your park in order for it to be great. Well, in my opinion, Great America has an absolutely elite top 2, and Flight Deck is no fucking slouch either. The park was really on a roll in the 2010s. They added some great new rides, removed some older, less popular rides, and updated some of the areas to make them look a bit nicer. In late 2019, they announced that their water park, Boomerang Bay, would be expanded and also had its name changed to South Bay Shores. This expansion included 6 new slides, 8 new kids slides, a new cafe, and a sandbar, and it seemed like Great America was going to continue this momentum into the 2020s. Until the pandemic.
New today, health officials giving no clear date as to when large theme parks can reopen. The COVID guidelines are strict. The timeline is unclear.
Finally, opening its doors, Great America will open the gates for the first time in more than a year.
With the COVID shutdowns, CGA did not operate at all in 2020 or for the first half of the 2021 season. The same went for many of the other parks run by Cedar Fair, and with the company facing some financial trouble, they had some tough choices to make. First, they declined to renew their management contract with another smaller California park called Gilroy Gardens. Then, in 2022, they sold California's Great America, along with the land it sits on, to Prologis, a logistics real estate company based in San Francisco. The park is currently open due to a lease that was included in the contract. However, the lease is set to expire at the end of the 2027 season unless they extend it through 2033. So worst case scenario, the park will close in about 2 years at the time of filming this, or best case scenario, it'll stay open till 2033. Either way, it's going to be gone within a decade, and I wouldn't be shocked if the lease isn't renewed at all. And this sucks so much. Great America was such an important part of my childhood, and the thought of it closing within my lifetime is really heartbreaking. I don't think I've really processed it yet since the park is still open for now, but when it's gone, I'm sure I'll be absolutely crushed. I've seen some people try and start some efforts to keep it open, but I doubt they'll do anything. I even saw a shitty clickbait article that said Travis Kelce was gonna save the park. Spoiler alert, that's not remotely true. He just happened to join a group of people that now own roughly 9% of the Six Flags shares. If anyone from the SF Chronicle is watching this video, fuck you. And while I certainly encourage anyone who's willing to sign petitions or spread awareness, I just can't get my hopes up. The park's land has already been sold, and I seriously doubt that Prologis would be willing to sell it back to Cedar Fair, or to any amusement park company for that matter. And to think just a few years ago, they were talking about expanding the park further, and some of the proposed additions sounded awesome. From what I've read from these plans, it seems like they were going to add a new giant pendulum ride, possibly to replace Delirium. It looked like they were also considering a Skyscreamer-style swing ride, as well as a slingshot. But the big addition I was hoping to see someday was the proposed 245-foot tall hypercoaster. This would have dominated the skyline and absolutely dwarfed every other coaster in the park, and also provided Great America with a much needed airtime-filled coaster. But sadly, this will almost certainly never happen now. So in honor of California's Great America, I want to spend this next chunk of time mentioning some of the attractions I haven't touched on yet. I did briefly mention Tiki Twirl, which is a Zamperla disco ride. When it opened, however, it was themed to the hit TV show Survivor, and featured on-ride music as well as fire on the torches. Last time I rode it, it didn't have either, but it's still a very fun ride. Centrifuge is one of the craziest rides I've ever done in my life. It's a Schwarzkopf Calypso that actually opened all the way back with the park in 1976. It's a fairly common ride type that mimics the movements of the typical scrambler ride you'd see at a lot of county fairs, but I swear, something about the fact that this particular ride sits at an angle just makes it ride so much more intensely than others. You really get pressed into your seat hard, even if you're riding alone. And if you do happen to ride with a group and you're sitting on the outside, have fun getting crushed. I'm saying all this, of course, as a compliment. I love this ride, even the terrifying noise it makes when the ride stops. There's also the Flying Eagles and Berserker, two more great family rides. I definitely can't forget to mention Barney Oldfield's Redwood Rally. This ride lets you drive one of those old-timey cars on a track that takes you past Demon and out back by the side of Grizzly, as well as briefly going under the structure of the ride. It's a very tame and scenic ride that I've loved since I was a little kid. It's a great ride because you don't have to be tall to ride, or drive it for that matter. And you know, even if you're bad at steering like most kids are, it doesn't matter because you're on a track. I actually remember that anytime I would ride with my granny as a kid, I would purposefully hit the track a couple times just because I thought it was funny. Also, I would get really excited if one of the roller coasters happened to fly by when we were on the ride. I also loved the Carousel Columbia. It's a very pretty ride that gives you a great view of the park's plaza area. Plus, if you ride on a windy day, you get a nice mist from the fountains, which will help you cool off. Before I wrap up this portion of the video, I want to talk about two more rides in particular. Not because they were my favorite, but because I forgot to talk about them earlier. The first is the last roller coaster I haven't mentioned yet, that being Psycho Mouse. This is a very standard Wild Mouse roller coaster, and while there's not much noteworthy to talk about it, it did scare me as a kid. Those snappy turns at the top of the lift hill are terrifying, which was obviously the point, but it worked very well. Oh yeah, this ride also seems to break down all the time. I remember one time my brother was stuck on the brake run because he rode it and I didn't. So while I waited for him to get off, I just went over and rode Woodstock Express like a bunch of times in a row. That was also definitely a transition coaster for me. It's one I would ride when I was bored of Woodstock or Lucy, but too scared to ride Flight Deck or Demon. The other ride I want to mention is Mass Effect New Earth. This isn't so much of a ride as it is more of a 4D theater. Think along the lines of Star Tours at Disneyland. This particular attraction opened in 2016, but the building itself dates all the way back to 1994. Originally opening as the Action Theater, it first showed Days of Thunder, which was a racing simulator. It was renamed to the Paramount Action/Effects Theater and showed a James Bond film called License to Thrill. 1 year later, that was removed, and various films were shown there over the next few years, including Dino Island 3D and The Seventh Portal. In 2003, SpongeBob SquarePants 4D premiered in the theater. Now, I loved SpongeBob as a kid, still do by the way, and I remember being super excited to ride it, and then I did. And it terrified me. Between the seats moving, the loud sounds in the theater, and the honestly kind of creepy imagery in the video.
Are you ready, kids?
Aye, aye, Captain!
I can't hear you!
Aye, aye, Captain!
Good! In you go!
What the fuck? Now, most people around my age probably remember the theater for that particular attraction, but there was also the Funtastic World of Hanna-Barbera, which started in 2006. And in 2013, they showed a Happy Feet themed film there. Then finally, in 2015, the ride was closed for renovations, and a year later, it reopened with the Mass Effect theme. I think objectively, this was an upgrade over some of the previous incarnations of the theater. While the theming is nowhere near the level of Disney or Universal, it is much better than most Six Flags or even Cedar Fair attractions. Plus, Mass Effect was still a relevant enough franchise to draw some attention to it. The story, however, is a pretty shameless ripoff of Star Tours at Disneyland. Alright, now stop me if you've heard this one before. So get this, you're on board what is supposed to be a normal aircraft which is taking you to a vacation destination. But along the way, something goes wrong and you end up fighting aliens. Your pilot eventually defeats the threat and you make your way to your original destination. There are some cool moments, like when a bunch of little bugs appear and they blow wisps of air at your feet. There's also a big monster that comes out and screams at you, and when he does, they spray some mist in your face that also fucking stinks, by the way. Either they were super dedicated to selling that moment, or they were just blasting water from the park's sewer line in your face. Either way, it smells awful. Overall, not an amazing attraction, but it's fun enough. There's also hardly ever any line for it, and the building does have AC, so it is a nice break on a hot day. But no matter what happens with that building between now and the park's permanent closure, I will always associate the theater with that SpongeBob 4D attraction. I could honestly go on forever about just this park alone. I have so many fond memories of it. I have this toxic waste coin bank that I think I also got on that 8th grade field trip. I also have these cool keychains from some of the roller coasters in the park. I don't have one for Grizzly, but I'm sure if they sell one, I'll end up buying it before the park closes. But I do have this cool fridge magnet which has most of the coasters on it. I briefly thought about discussing some of the defunct rides of the park, but since I don't really have any personal experience riding them, I ultimately decided against it. I will, however, list out the defunct roller coasters that operated at the park in the past. There was the Whizzer, a Schwarzkopf family coaster, the Gulf Coaster, which was the park's original kiddie coaster. Grease Lightning / Tidal Wave was a standard Schwarzkopf shuttle launch coaster, but I know many people absolutely loved it to death back in the day. There was Invertigo, the very problematic Vekoma inverted boomerang.
Something happened with the lift chain that caused the ride to get stuck on the first lift. Once we realized that we would need to evacuate the guests, safety being our #1 priority, we called in the Santa Clara Fire Department to assist us.
I remember the day that news story aired, and that definitely did not help my fear of roller coasters at the time. Eventually that ride was relocated to Dorney Park. Then finally in 2000, Vekoma would build Stealth, the world's first flying coaster. The maintenance for this ride was an absolute nightmare, and despite how unique it was, it struggled to meet an adequate number of riders to make it worth keeping. So just 3 years later, it was relocated to Carowinds and renamed Nighthawk. And that's about all I have to say about Great America for now. If this place really does close soon, then I just want to say thank you to Great America for all of the fond memories and experiences that it gave me, and I'd like to take a moment of silence to remember the park. Now, Great America is definitely the park I've been to the most in my life, but I've been fortunate enough to visit just about every major amusement park in California, so I have had the chance to ride a fair number of roller coasters in my day. But I was thinking, what would a video about amusement parks and roller coasters be without a list? Specifically a list of my top 10 favorite roller coasters. And again, keep in mind, I've only really ridden the ones inside California, so I'm going to be missing most of the world's best roller coasters out there. That's just how it is, alright? First, I do want to give an honorable mention to Hang Time at Knott's Berry Farm. This is one of the newest credits for me, and it really made a strong first impression. That lift hill and first drop alone could have given it a spot in this list, but the rest of the layout is pretty solid too. There's some great inversions and a little bit of hang time. My only real gripe is I wish the ride was a bit longer. Now for the actual top 10. Number 10 is Wonder Woman Flight of Courage at Six Flags Magic Mountain. The first Magic Mountain coaster on the list, not even close to the last one. This is one of the larger scale single rail coasters from RMC, and I cannot get enough of this ride type. There was a weirdly short line for this one when we went, so we got to ride it twice in a row, and this thing is just pure fun. It's not as intense as some of the other RMCs in my opinion, but there's still some great airtime moments. That first drop in the stall are fantastic, and it's a decently long ride. At number 9, we have Accelerator at Knott's Berry Farm. This intimate launch coaster shoots you right out of the station from 0 to 82 miles per hour in just 2.3 seconds. This is easily one of the most forceful launches on any coaster out there. It was also the first and one of the only remaining hydraulic launch coasters out there. It also features a top hat and a 90-degree drop and a couple of fun bank turns. What more could you ask for? Except, again, maybe a longer layout. But I mean besides that. Number 8 has us going back to Magic Mountain for full throttle. Now take most of what I said about Accelerator and add a giant fucking vertical loop to it. The launch, while not quite as forceful, is still pretty strong, and you get so much hang time on that loop, I swear it feels like you're gonna roll back on every single ride. This ride also features a backwards launch and a top hat that connects to the vertical loop, which just looks awesome. It's also a very smooth ride. but like with most of these so far, I wish it was a little bit longer. Next at number 7, we have to go back to Knott's Berry Farm for Ghost Rider. This massive wooden coaster really has everything you could want in a Woody. It has a great first drop, some great airtime, some great laterals and bank turns, and thanks to the refurbishment from GCI, it's arguably running better than it ever has. It was so much smoother than the last time I rode, but I wouldn't call it glossy smooth, which is a good thing. And maybe the best part of this ride, it's long. You really feel like you get your money's worth every time you ride this one, which is why it's probably my personal favorite ride in the park. Moving on to number 6, just barely missing out on the top 5, we have Flight Deck at California's Great America. Easily one of my most ridden coasters ever, and the other people who have ridden it can tell you why. The stats aren't anything crazy, just a height of 100 feet and a top speed of 50 miles per hour. But this thing flies through the layout. You get a great view of Levi's Stadium from the lift, and you drop down into one of the most intense vertical loops and helixes I've ever experienced. Seriously, it's hard not to gray out during that part. Then there's a snappy 0G roll, followed by a corkscrew, and another helix that goes over the admittedly kind of disgusting water behind Great America. And the ride still runs perfectly smooth, which is incredible for a coaster that opened 32 years ago. Now here's where things get really tough for me to decide. I could have honestly swapped all 5 of these with each other based on the day, but for now, here's what I'm going with. At number 5, I've chosen X2 at Six Flags Magic Mountain. Where to even start with this one? Well, how about the fact that you go up the almost 200-foot lift hill facing backwards? I don't know if they slowed the chain lift speed down or what, but it feels like you're on that lift hill forever. And then as you're about to descend the 215-foot drop, you're rotated in your seat to face directly towards the ground. I know a lot of people have called this one the scariest ride in the world, and I don't know if I fully agree with that, but it's pretty damn intimidating. I definitely got a bit nervous the first time that I rode it. Now I do have a small problem with it, and it's the fact that it's not rough, but it is shaky, if that makes sense. You do get tossed around a bit in your seat, and it can be mildly uncomfortable at times, but in my opinion, it's not a huge deal. I mean, obviously, I love this thing to death if it, manages to make its way into the top 5. We're staying at Magic Mountain for number 4, which is Twisted Colossus. The 2015 RMC makeover of the original Colossus is absolutely phenomenal. It's a dueling coaster that is also a Mobius loop, which means that you're guaranteed to ride both sides every time. You get 2 amazing first drops, multiple inversions, multiple moments of airtime, there's a great 0G stall, there's a double down, and there's a flyby where you get to see the riders on the other train. If the ride's actually dueling, results may vary depending on the ride staff that day. I remember going to Magic Mountain for the first time to ride Colossus in 2014, and I think we did it twice that day, and I remember being really sad that it was closing, but I also knew in my heart that Magic Mountain was going to announce an RMC redo of it soon, and I felt so validated the day they actually did. Anyways, I love this ride. It's incredibly smooth, and while it's not necessarily a super intense ride, it's just pure fun, which at the end of the day is what roller coasters are here to do, right? We're getting to the top 3 now, and these all really could have been switched with one another. For me, I'm going with Tatsu at number 3, the final coaster on the list from Magic Mountain, and it's honestly impressive to be able to be called the king of coasters at the park with the most coasters in the world. First, you ascend the 170-foot lift hill, which also provides an incredible view of the surrounding area. Then you go down a 111-foot drop and reach a top speed of 62 miles per hour. This isn't the longest or the fastest ride in the park, but these B&M flyers really do make you feel like you're flying, which is such an incredible and unique feeling. Plus, Tatsu's signature pretzel loop is one of, if not the most intense elements on any coaster I think I've ever done. It's pretty much impossible not to gray out on it. They also repainted the ride recently and it looks amazing. My only small nitpick with the ride is that sometimes dispatch times can be a bit slow, but I don't know if that's necessarily the ride's fault. At number 2, we're looking towards Great America for Gold Striker. I love a good wooden coaster, and this thing in my opinion is the king of them. Built by GCI and opening in 2013, this ride kicks so much ass that they actually had to put a tunnel over the first drop to contain some of the ass that it kicks. There really isn't a way for me to oversell this ride, I think. Yeah, it's gotten a bit rough in its age, but it's not super uncomfortable. If anything, I kind of like that about it too. But this thing flies through the course. You get some great moments of ejector airtime, but the main focus of this ride is all of the super intense bank turns. It's really amazing how fast-paced this ride is. The top speed's only 54 miles per hour, but you stay pretty low to the ground for most of the ride, so you carry that momentum pretty much the whole way. By the time you hit the final brakes, it's hard not to smile and just want to get right back on and ride it over and over again. Rides like this are what makes Great America's imminent closure so heartbreaking. I hope they find a way to relocate this thing to another park, but I don't know how practical that is with a wooden coaster. And this was my favorite coaster ever, and favorite at the park. Until 2018, because coming in at number 1, we have Railblazer. I'm well aware that this whole list might have been pretty underwhelming for a lot of enthusiasts, but hey, this is my list based on the rides that I've done, alright? And for me, there's no better ride out there that I have done than Railblazer. I remember the day this thing got announced. I couldn't believe it. Great America was getting an RMC. I waited with anticipation, as well as some nervousness for it to open. I mean, what if it wasn't good? What if it was sluggish or too rough? Well, I was lucky enough to ride it, I believe the 3rd day it was soft opened. They were only letting season pass holders ride it, and me and my friend were season pass holders at the time, so we got to go on that day. Not only that, but we were on the first train of the day, so we got to be maybe one of the first, I don't know what, 1,000 or so people to get on, and man was I worried for nothing. Not only were my expectations met, they were shattered with ease. First of all, that drop that takes you 90 degrees straight down into the rockwork is breathtaking. Second, riding alone really ups the thrill factor. It makes the whole chaotic nature of the ride feel like 10 times more powerful. Third, forget this thing having pacing issues. This ride is the king of pace. Once again, you only reach a top speed of about 52 miles per hour, but you go through every single element with so much speed that it feels legitimately out of control. That first airtime hill is so aggressive, and it just keeps going. Every element is executed flawlessly. I know some people find the ride cars or the restraints to be uncomfortable, and while I agree they're definitely odd, they have never actually hindered the ride in my opinion. The only real critique I could give Railblazer is, you guessed it, I wish it was a bit longer, but I mean, what are you gonna do? I said the same thing about pretty much every ride on this list. So there it is, that's my 10 personal favorite roller coasters. There were a few that just barely missed the top 10 for me. I already mentioned Hang Time, but I thought I would also mention that rides like Medusa, Apocalypse, Goliath, West Coast Racers, Batman the Ride, and Silver Bullet were all being considered, but ultimately just lost out to stronger competition. And I think that's really all I have to say in this video. It was cool getting to talk about some of these memories and some of the silly things that scared me as a kid. Going into this video, I wasn't really sure what the point of it was going to be, but thinking about it now, I think it was cathartic to talk about some of my dumb childhood fears, and this video also does serve as a goodbye to Great America from me for when it inevitably closes for good. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And if you really liked it, please consider leaving a like or subscribing to my channel to stay up to date on all the new videos that I post. But until that time comes, I just want to say thank you and goodbye.